Hey guys, how's it going? It's Zenful, and today I'm back with another TFT commentary video. This one was done about a week or so ago. I just got around to editing the video and doing the commentary for it, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Before I start, I just wanted to say make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to us. We're really trying to push 100 subscribers so that we can get our custom URL. It would really mean a lot to us, and it would really help us out. Honestly, even if you just leave a comment, that would help too. It just gives us some feedback, gives us kind of an idea of what you guys like, what you guys don't like. That also helps us as well. Pretty much just any interaction you guys are willing to do, it really means a lot to us. So yeah, let's just get into this video, and I hope you guys enjoy. I start out the game here. I have three choices for my augment: the underdog, weak spot, and socialite heart. Usually I scouted there to see if anyone had socialite yet. I usually don't like taking that as my first augment because you never know where the socialite square is going to be. So it's kind of an awkward augment to take early. So I just end up taking the underdog one just as something that's just like a little bit of a utility early. Something that makes your front line last a little longer, maybe give you a little bit of extra damage if the fight lasts a long time. Um, it's not really my favorite choice to take early. Honestly, I would rather not take it usually, but here it was kind of the beginning of the season, the beginning of the set. So I was just kind of trying things out, and I didn't really know what was necessarily the best at this point. So I just kind of took it to try it out. I hadn't played it yet, and I was kind of planning to play like a tankier build since I already had two bruisers. So it ended up being fine, but really it's not the greatest. Right here I get the Ezreal 2, which is huge early, especially with the 2 scrap, 2 bruiser. He can just kind of sit back and just do damage, and also give the scrap bonus to the Trundle so that he can get a tank item. Having a full item early without having to slam items is really big, because you really don't have to like commit to anything. You can just kind of put one component on someone and just let it ride. It ended up being a good idea to not take the socialite square because it was on the front line and I had some Chemtex going. So usually you don't run Chemtex in the front line. You usually run them in at least the second line, if not the fourth. So it ended up working out that I didn't take that. But putting in Tarek early is always pretty handy. He gives pretty good healing and he's a pretty good tank early. So and also having the socialite square, even if it's not necessarily under carry, it's still a little bit of extra damage, so you can at least kill maybe 1 or 2 units, save a little bit of health, and just stay healthy for the late game. I was able to econ 10 gold there before the carousel. That's usually not what I do. I usually am ending up pre-leveling there to 5, but I just thought since I had the 10 gold and I had a solid bench that it would probably be better just to econ there because I can always level after the carousel, and I didn't really need anything right off the bat. I already had a Lissandra and 2 Worx, so I was in a pretty good spot going out of the carousel, so I just decided not to level. So I took the sword here. That's really the best component that you can put on Ezreal with scrap because it makes the most useful damage items for him. Rod is okay too, maybe glove. Glove is decent, it's not really the best because it builds into a lot of utility or tank items, so it's not really the best. So usually I try and go for the sword on Ezreal if I can. Plus I already had the chain vest as well, so I could slam a GA if I needed to, if I was playing like Yone or even Jinx. But I think I end up using it for like an Infinity Edge or something. So it ends up being fine that I took it. It puts out some more damage, and again, it saves me a little bit of health because he's putting out so much damage. In my opinion, I really think Ezreal is one of the better champs early to save a little bit of health. He has the scrap bonus, and you can also go Innovator with him as well. That gives you an extra champ on the board with Innovator or just a full item with the scrap bonus. So it's always nice to have that, and there's Bodyguard, Protector, and Bruiser that are all scrap. So you can always have a front line with him, and he's always putting out at least decent damage, if not really good damage. In this game, I'm pretty sure I run him pretty far into the game, and he's still viable. He's still doing a lot of damage, especially with items on him, and having the scrap bonus as well. The jungle is usually when I scout. I was looking around here. I see one guy has the 2 socialite squares, and there's one person running Arcanist. There wasn't anyone really contesting me too hard for Chemtech, so I decided that it would be okay to buy the Singe to get him 2-star, and keep pushing for maybe the Urgot or like a Victor as well. My items were definitely better here for AD with the Urgot, but I always keep it a little bit of flex just to see if maybe I can push items on the Victor instead. With getting the Lissandra so early, that's one of the main reasons that I slam the Gunblade. It's definitely one of her best items because she does a lot of ability damage, and it heals her for a lot. So, and it also heals allies as well. So it's just a really good item for her. Since I got her so early, I thought maybe this would be a good chance to try her out, and maybe get the 3-star, or I could always just pivot out of it and go to the Victor if I needed to late game, if I wasn't hitting any or if I was being contested. Another reason Ezreal is so good here is because he's so versatile with AP and AD items. He puts out a lot of damage no matter if you have AP or AD. So he's a very good item holder, and he can stay on your team until probably around like 3-5 to 4-1, depending how strong or weak the lobby is and how strong the rest of your team is. Usually I try and pivot out of him around 3-5. It really just depends if I'm running a 3-4 cost carry. 3 costs, I usually do it earlier, but the 4 costs, 5 costs, I try and keep them longer. Just econ with them, kill as many units as I can, and just save gold for later. There I end up taking the double socialite square. That probably really wasn't the best of ideas either. That's not really a super strong augment, especially for Chemtech, and seeing that the original socialite square was in such a bad spot for me, I feel like that's part of the reason why I ended up taking it, just because I figured if one was in the front line, the other one would be at least in the second line, if not the very back line. So I would be in a pretty good spot for that. Maybe put the Ezreal on it, or like a Urgot or the Lissandra late. It ends up being in a pretty good spot, so I was fine with it, but there really just wasn't, like, the other 2 augments just really weren't that strong, so I thought it was worth a shot at least to try it out. My econ is pretty bad this game. I am holding a lot of units to switch over to Chemtech. I probably should have sold out of the Ezreal right once I hit the Warwick 2. He could have easily carried those items. They really aren't the best for him, but he could have carried the items and at least like save me a little gold for econ. But I still am in a pretty good spot. I have a ton of health, and I have around like 25, 30 gold. That's not really that great for this point in the game, but I was still looking good. I still had a decent bit of gold, so I wasn't really too worried. Here in this fight, I kind of got saved by the QSS. Um, it it built off the glove for the scrap into QSS, so the Blitzcrank didn't pull me. I probably would have ended up losing this fight, or it would have been way closer if it did end up pulling the Ezreal, because he was really my only damage at this point. Trundle is decent damage early, but he was only 1 star still with a tank item, so he really probably couldn't have carried too much. And having the Warmogs on the Caston, I probably would have not been in a good spot. I probably would have taken a loss there rather than being able to keep the win streak going. I skip over it there, but I looked at the top guy's team to see what he was running, see if maybe I would be able to beat him if I did end up getting matched up with him. I wasn't really too confident that I could beat him, but I was already on a big win streak, so even if I did lose, like, I didn't really think it was worth pushing to 7 here. It might have been, maybe. Getting the innovator in really isn't that big of a deal, but I could have maybe put that in and gave myself a better chance to keep winning, or just pivot to the 3 chem tech there and go 7, because I already had the champs I needed, and I could just take the Ezreal out and just put the items on Lissandra right away. This is another reason that I like doing videos like this, because it gives me a chance to watch back videos that I've done, gameplay that I've done in the past, and kind of give me an idea of things I'm doing wrong, things I'm doing right. And as you can see in this game, I definitely made a few mistakes here and there with econing and just item use early. But this didn't really matter as much because it was the very beginning of the season, and everyone's elo is like reset. So I still did have the same MMR or around the same MMR as I did last season, but it really wasn't that big of a deal because there was still some pretty weak players in the lobby, and I'm still running Ezreal on 4-1, and he's still my top damage, which usually isn't the case at this point in the season. Like, now that I'm ranking up more and whatnot, it's not really possible to run Ezreal this late into the game. Really, I should have pivoted by now, but it was one of my first, like, probably 10 or so games of the seasons or the set, so I was still kind of like figuring things out and figuring out what champions could hold items for me, what champions would be carries for me, stuff like that. So it ends up being okay, but now at this point, whenever this video comes out, you probably won't see me running, in any future videos, you probably won't see me running Ezreal this late. I'll probably end up pivoting out of him like around 3-5 or so for like a 3 cost, or maybe just a 2 cost 2-star champ, and if I'm lucky, a 4 cost, because he really does fall off. He's a very good item holder early, like I said before, but he can't really keep up very well in the mid game. Before this round, I end up rolling a little bit and I get a Tom Kench. That's a pretty big pickup for me because it put me at 4 bruisers and 3 Chemtech, which is pretty strong. The front line is just ridiculously tanky, and with the Chemtech bonus, it also helps a lot. I didn't have the Mundo in yet, but once I do, he's definitely very strong with 4 bruiser and 3 Chemtech. He can survive for a long time. He has good sustain, and he does pretty decent damage as well. But unfortunately, I didn't have him in yet, so I did end up losing that last fight. Tom Kench is a good unit to throw in if you're running bruisers or mercenaries anyway, because he does spit out gold and sometimes items whenever he eats champs. And he can scale really well if you start feeding him pretty early. So he's definitely a good unit to run whenever you're not really sure exactly what you're playing, but you know you can fit bruisers in. Right before this round, after the carousel, I ended up leveling to 8. I had a ton of gold, and my team was still pretty strong. I didn't have the Lissandra yet. I probably should have rolled right here to get at least one more Lissandra, and maybe a couple more pairs, maybe down to like 20 gold or so. I think it would have been worth, but this guy is so weak that it ends up not mattering. I'm not really sure if I win the next fight or not, to be honest, but even if I lose, really the only guy that I would lose to at this point after scouting would have been the top guy, and even him I probably wouldn't have lost that bad, so I wasn't really too worried. That being said, I do end up rolling a little bit. I roll probably around 10 or 15 gold to try and get the Lissandra 2, so I'm a little bit stronger just in case I do fight the top guy and save a little bit of health. Now that the game had progressed a little bit, this guy was running Chemtech, but he was so low health, and he was also running mutants that I wasn't really worried about rerolling for the Lissandra. He wasn't holding any on his bench, but he was holding Malzahar and Kog'Maw. So I thought he was probably just going to be rerolling for mutants and not really worried about Lissandra. So having 3 Lissandras off the board really isn't that big of a deal, and I could still have a good chance of hitting the 3-star Lissandra. I was at 71 health on 4-7, so really I'm not that concerned about it. There was still a lot of time, and I still had a decent bit of gold, and I was already level 8. So, and the only reason I went 8 was to fit in the Yuumi. Off the jungle, I end up getting the tears for the blue buff, which is definitely one of the better items on Lissandra as well. I pretty much had BIS items at this point for her, so I thought that if I was going to roll for her for the 3-star, I would have no better chance than this. I hadn't hit a Victor yet, and these items are okay for Victor, but really Spear Shojin is definitely better than blue buff. Jeweled Gauntlet is fine, but Hextech Gunblade really isn't that great on him. It's definitely a solid utility item for healing, but it's not necessarily his best, so I thought leaving it on the Lissandra and just rolling would be fine here. On this round, I rolled like around 30 gold or so, and I only hit 2 Lissandras. That's not really that bad, but it is 5-2 already at this point, and I'm still running Lissandra 2 carry. The rest of my team was just so tanky with the bruisers and the Taric and then the CC and heals from the Yuumi that I was still not really losing by much even when I was losing. So I was pretty confident with 3 other people around 20 health or less under me. I wasn't really too worried about losing out or taking like 20 health or something in one turn. There I lost really bad to the top guy. Actually not really bad, but I did lose by a few units. So I just decided to roll down all my gold before the carousel, and I did hit 2 Lissandras within like 10 gold or something. And I had a Nico's, which I could have used it on the Yuumi and just kept rolling the rest of my gold just to see if I got it. I just figured I would use the Nico's on it, just save a tiny bit of gold, and I figured for sure I would win, so I could at least get to 10 gold, which I don't do because I feed the Tom Kench. I wasn't feeding him every turn because, like I said, it was the beginning of the set, and I wasn't really used to having to feed him every turn, so sometimes I forgot about it, but feeding him early and consistently feeding him can be really good because He can be one of your top damage dealers, and he's very good CC whenever he eats champs and they can't do anything. They're just in there taking damage. So he's definitely a good utility champ. And he already had got me one item component and some gold at this point, even on 5-3. So he was putting me a little bit more ahead, and giving me the 4 bruiser buff as well. At this point, I had pretty much faced everyone semi-recently, including the top guy, and really the only person that I thought I would be able to lose to with the Lissandra 3 would be the top guy, but I'm pretty sure his carry was like a Camille 3-star. I don't know that he had a good team around it, obviously, but it's not like he had like 3 2-star 5 costs or anything. So I really wasn't that worried. I took the Frozen Heart because I knew he was running melee, and it's just a really good utility item to put on your frontline units, especially when people are running melee. When I saw this guy's team, I was a little bit nervous that I was going to lose. He did have all of the Yordles except for Vex 3-starred, and he also had an Orianna, but his units are super clumped here, and I don't know that I win the fight, but I definitely kill like a decent bit of units, so I'm still in a solid spot to keep just saving my gold and maybe putting it towards like a 5 cost, maybe the 2-star Tom Kinch, or something like that. But his team was just a little too much right there. It was a little too strong. I didn't have the 2-star Tom Kinch yet, which ends up being really big for me. Another thing that really helps me out in this game, to be able to take it over the top, is the chemical overload. That's definitely one of the better augments in my opinion. If you have 5 chem tech in and 4 of them are exploding, and doing a lot of AoE damage, and your carry is able to just kind of sit back and keep pumping damage while they're either dying or staying alive and just tanking their backline units. It does a good bit of damage, and it also helps with sustain with the 5 chem tech as well. Before this round, I wasn't really sure what I should put, who else I should put items on, so I just put the GA and the QSS on the Vi. That was probably another mistake on my part. I probably could have put it on someone else, but honestly, I wasn't really sure who else I would even put it on. Maybe I could have put it on the Tom Kench or something, for whenever I 2-starred him, but it wasn't that big of a deal really. She's still a really good utility champ. She lessens armor, and helps out a lot with AD as well. At this point, I'm just continuing to feed the Tom Kench any extra units that I can, trying to power him up, make him a little bit more tanky and do a little more damage, so that I'm able to beat this Yordles guy and then the top guy as well. Luckily here I face his Ghost. I'm pretty sure he gets knocked out here by the top guy, so that put me in a decent position. Actually, he won against the top guy, which I couldn't remember if he did or not. But I can barely even beat this guy even with no synergies, just as Ghost. So I was kind of nervous that I would end up losing out to that guy if I didn't really do something here. But I do get the Mundo 2, which is really, really big for my front line. And I also had the Yumi connected to him as well, so I knew he would stay alive for a while. I knew um, the rest of the bruisers would stay alive for a while and just kind of let Lissandra do her thing. I end up taking out the Taric here with the 2 spotlight. Um, it really felt bad, but honestly, with the chemical overload, I really felt like it was worth it, just to get the 5 chem tech in and just do as much AoE damage as possible. Lissandra already does a ton, but I just thought it would help out a little bit with the frontline units, just because this guy with the Yordles was clumped so much that I thought the chemical overload would just do nutty damage. you can kind of see here the power of the Mundo. He is absolutely a unit whenever he's 2-starred, especially with 5 Chem Tech. He's literally tanking their whole team for the majority of the fight, and he doesn't end up dying. So Lissandra is able to just sit back and do almost 12k damage, where Mundo is doing literally half of her damage with all tank items. So he's definitely a strong frontline unit as well, especially with the Bruiser and the Chem Tech. It's just a no-brainer to put him in. Here I take the Arcanist. I'm not really sure why I pushed so hard to get the Arcanist, but I did get that for the Victor, and I'm pretty sure I put it on the Tom Kench here because I'd been feeding him. Oh, I put it on the Yumi, sorry. Just so that I could get the 20% extra AP, even on top of what the Lissandra was already doing. That I knew that would be at least a decent pickup, and really none of my other units were carry champs besides the Victor. And I already had enough damage with the Lissandra and the Chemical Overload that I more just kind of wanted like a support item, something that would be helpful for my whole team rather than just one champ. After knocking out the Yordles guy, I knew I was in a good spot to win this because this guy had put so much econ into his early game champs, getting 3 stars of like 1 and 2 costs, that I would be in a pretty good spot because I had a 3-star 3 costs and very strong supporting units. I had 3 5 costs in, one of them being 2-star, and I had super good items on Mundo. So especially for his team with all the melee champs, having the Frozen Heart was really big. Definitely helped out a lot, and honestly, just the pure amount of damage that Lissandra does AoE, it just was pretty much over after that point. Here I get another Gunblade from the Scuttle. It's really not that useful to me, but I'd already been beating that guy even without it, so, and I was able to level. I had enough gold to level and put in just like any other support unit, which I end up putting back the Taric for the 2 spotlights, so that I can get even more damage out of my champs than I already was. I ended up being able to put the Vi with the IE on the front, the frontline spotlight, and then I just swapped the Lissandra to the bottom spotlight, like literally right before the round starts. So she's able to do a lot more damage, and the Vi is able to do a decent bit of damage as well. She's not really a carry champ, obviously, she's more of just a tank, but having that 20% extra damage is pretty nice for sure. There goes the Singed again, throwing champs into the middle of others, and then the Lissandra literally just ults right on top of them and just does even more damage in an AoE than she would otherwise. I really don't think Singed is all that great of a late game champ, but it ends up helping out a lot there. As you could see on that last fight, Vi did almost as much damage as the Lissandra, so putting items on her and putting her in the spotlight was actually a decent choice. I don't think it necessarily won me the game, but it definitely helped out with a lot of damage and just pushing me over the top there at the end. So that's the end of the game. That's the end of the video. I get the win with the Lissandra 3. I really think she's a strong champ. It's kind of not really my thing to play reroll comps, but I really enjoy playing her. She's very fun to play with all the AoE damage she does, and I really like Chemtech's. So it's just a pretty nice mashup of stuff that I enjoy. So I'll probably play it some more in the future, but it's not really my go-to comp. I don't think it's overpowered necessarily, but I would definitely think it would be at least a top 4 even in Masters lobbies. So it's pretty solid, especially if you can get the Chemical Overload. earlier, then I probably would have been able to win streak longer, swap out of the Ezreal earlier, and maybe save a little bit more health and get a little bit more econ. But even so, it was good. It ended up working out. So yeah, thank you guys for watching the video. Like I said at the beginning, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to us, even if you just comment, even if you just watch the videos, getting us some extra engagement on the channel and just kind of like pushing us to make some more content for you guys. But yeah, that'll be it for me today, guys. Thanks a lot. Peace.